Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to another episode of the After Maghrib podcast. Some would say this is your favorite Shia Muslim podcast. Yes, I know, another name, another face on the podcast, co-hosting today since Ahmed Goku's absence. I'm sorry if you're disappointed, and thank you if you're impressed. I'm actually very happy to be here because we're going to talk about one of the most important individuals of Shia Islam, which is none other than Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. As always, I'm going to be co-hosting, with one of my older brothers, Sayyid Ali Radhawi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. I'm better now.
Nah, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Tkhajilna, Sayyid. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, I can't complain. I've been under the weather in the last few weeks, so people who listen in week out will understand my voice is a bit changed.
Yes.
That's inshallah.
But that's why we told them to pray for us.
Yes.
Especially you for this week, Sayyid.
How are you keeping?
Well, alhamdulillah, not too bad. The weather this week has been a bit, not that nice. But other than that, I'm excited for tonight. I'm really excited. We have a beautiful guest with us today. And I think me and you especially are going to learn a lot today.
We are, because we are going to be discussing, inshallah, the life of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi afdal salati wa azka salam. And there is so much to learn from him. We say we are Jaffaris.
Yes.
We are Shia.
Yes.
So we look up to this most important figure we can say when it comes to our jurisprudence, which you beautifully said at the very beginning.
Yes.
And we can't have this conversation alone.
Of course
so we are joined by the amazing, the wonderful, the respected Sayyid Mohammed Ali Rizvi. Sayyidina, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming down.
It's an honor.
How was the journey to the studios?
Alhamdulillah. It's an honor to be here. And it's even more of an honor to be here in the name of the sixth holy Imam, salamullahi alayhi. The Ja'faris coming together to remember Ja'far Al-Sadiq. Salamullahi alayhi
salam. Sayyidina, normally we, before we kickstart off our main discussions, when we have like a special guest that comes over and, honors us with their presence and their gems and their wisdom, we have like a question our viewers know as an icebreaker, but for me is to get to know you more. And for the viewers and listeners get to understand who you are as an individual better. But this one's in relation to Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq. So it's a bit different to our normal icebreakers. So I'm going to give you two scenarios, and you can't choose both. You have to choose one and say the reason why.
Right.
Option A, Sayyidina, you have the opportunity to serve in the house of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq. Option 2, you have a lifetime of learning under him. Imam Jaffer is your teacher and you're his student. Which one would you pick and why? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
That's a tough one. Damn.
Because both of them are
the best of both worlds.
Forms of salvation and sa'adah.
Ahsant.
But I think for me, I would go with serving the Imam in his household, because I consider myself to be his servant, his slave. And something tells me just by serving him, I'll be learning. Because it's his household. To be there, to serve him, to see him. Because, you have in the narrations that those who used to serve Ahlul Bayt, for example, Fidda or Qambar, they were servants, they used to serve, but at the same time, they also had reached peaks of ma'rifah.
Sahih. Wow. Yes.
And then there are those who came and learned and became students, and yet they, deviated, and, there's no guarantee. So I would choose service over maybe a classroom sort of a setting.
Beautiful. I love that. I really love that. Especially, I know Yasser loves khidmah.
Yes.
So this is something.
Who doesn't say
Of course.
Who doesn't love khidmah, to be honest?
MashaAllah.
Habibi.
Yes. Allah bless all those khadimeen of the Imam.
Inshallah. Sayyidina, let's start the discussion.
Really? Yes. Are we going to dive into
it? It is, because there is so much points I think we want to come across. And I want to maximize how much, inshallah, we can learn from you today, saying that when it comes to the life of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq. And I think if we can begin here, we know Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi salam is one of the most important Islamic figures throughout Islamic history.
Yes. Yeah.
But despite this, we find in many circles, for example, when it comes to the Sunni world, he's absent from their talks, from their circles. When it comes to the Shi'i world, he's limited to just to قال الصادق قال الصادق, nothing more and nothing less. So I feel like there's always like an underappreciation.
Yeah.
Why do we find ourselves in this situation?
I agree with that. And also, just a point here, we should have more on this Imam for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't know how many of us know this, but he's one of the longest living Imams. Except, of course, Imam Sahib al-Zaman, but the ones who were born and then were killed fi sabilillah. He's one of the longest living Imams, so that means we should spend the longest on his life, on his teachings, on his studies. So that's number one. Number two, we are Ja'fari
Yes.
in fiqh. We are Alawi in Aqidah, but we are Ja'fari in fiqh. So we should give him more time. Of course, we spend time with Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. But something tells me that we need to spend more time with his fiqh, with his ideas, with his teachings. And his students speak for the Imam himself. So I give you credit. I give credit to those who do work for the Holy Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, to really try to highlight what he taught. I mean, he had students who became Imams of others.
Yes.
We'll get there eventually.
We have to.
But he has students who became Imams of others. And he's not somebody who needs introduction, because he's known in Shia circles as well as Sunni circles. For example, Imam Jawad may not be known in other circles. Or for example, Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salam may not be known in other circles. But he's someone who's known in Sunni circles clearly. Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq, yes, we know Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq. You are Ja'fari, straight away Ja'far Al-Sadiq. So for this reason, I think that he's not somebody who needs introduction, but yet at the same time, he is somebody who needs a lot of dissecting, revising, revisiting, and opening the debate. Why is it that such a big personality does not get that same attention that, for example, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, or Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal? Why is it that he gets less than them? And so this is where we dive into it, really, and we try to figure out what are the issues. Why is it? There is clearly a reason. I mean, if they do not deny the fact that Abu Hanifa and Malik would study under him, then why is it that he doesn't get that same? The answer is simple and short. He is, of course, the Imams of the Shia, and there was already a bias.
Okay.
That he's a Shia Imam. Throughout history, you find that. Imam Musa al-Kadhim, هذا Imam al-Rafida, as they said on his janazah when he lay there. Who is this? This is the Imam of the Rawafid. That's one. The other is that the Imam alayhi salam did not give bay'ah to the governments of the time, so he didn't have that support, whereas other Imams did. So he did not have that backing from the government that the other Imams were getting. So now when people ask the question, Hanafi school of thought, famous. Maliki school of thought, famous. Shafi'i school of thought, famous. Hanbali, famous. Ja'fari, not everybody knows. Why? This is why. Because there is an ideology that was pumped and pushed. And Imam Ja'far Sadiq alayhi salam's ideology was not pumped nor pushed.
And I think the point you're trying to say, or that I understand, or how I see it, in fact say it, is that because I think if they elevate the status of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq in those four different schools, Shafi'i, Maliki, Hanbali, that it sort of opens up questions, possibly a can of worms of who's your teacher. Who is this person that you learn all your fiqh from, for example? That might send them straight to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq. Do you think there's a possibility of
but how
why?
do they not ask the question?
Well, that's what baffles me as well.
Because I always find it it's common sense. Okay, I revere this man. He teaches me a lot. But who taught him? Yeah. So what do the other people in the other schools of thought not ask this?
Yeah.
And whilst we're in the same topic of Imam Ja'far Sadiq teaching students, can I ask a question of how was the classrooms? how are they, like, I don't want to say built, but like how are they organized? For example, like we know Abu Hanifa and Maliki, they were taught
Malik,
by Imam Ja'far
directly, yes.
But how was it? Was it in a classroom of 30? Was it in the mosque? Was it at random times? Did the Imam say for the next 2 years you're going to be under me? Do you know what I mean? Like, how was it organized?
So I definitely don't think the classes were as systemized as they are today.
Yeah.
But we do know from the Kitab al-Irshad of Al-Mufid, he says that the Holy Imam had 4,000 students.
MashaAllah.
Now 4,000 is a big number.
Yeah.
You don't even have a classroom of 30.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that 4,000 sat in one room together at one time.
Yes.
It could mean 4,000 over a number of years who have come and have gone from the beginning to the end, whatever. But Shaykh al-Mufid says there were 4,000 students of the Imam, and they were all narrating from the Imam. So imagine how many they are narrating from the Holy Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. There are 4,000. Imagine having 40 that are narrating from Abu Hanifa. We heard directly from Abu Hanifa. Or Imam Shafi'i. Then imagine having 4,000. So they were definitely not systemized as these, and perhaps they were not daily. But consistently, a bulk of those 2 years of Abu Hanifa's life were under the teachings of Imam Al-Sadiq. And hence his famous statement, لَوْلَا السَّنَتَانِ لَهَلَكَ نُعْمَانِ. Had it not been for those 2 years, Nu'man would have perished. And interesting, some people have tried to tweak this. But wait, he doesn't say he studied, he just says 2 years. He doesn't say he studied 2 years under Ja'far al-Sadiq. People need any reason to just exclude Ahlul Bayt. Yes. Any reason to deny the fadila of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. But Alusi, Sayyid Shahabuddin Mahmud Alusi, who is the Mufassir of Quran, Tafsir Ruhul Ma'ani, his famous tafsir. He's a Sunni Mufassir. He says, Abu Hanifa, by saying this, those 2 years under Ja'far al-Sadiq, is taking pride upon those 2 years which he spent under Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam.
Yeah.
So those 2 years here, according to him and others, Qanduzi in his Yanabi al-Mawadda, or for example, Ibn Hajar in his As-Sawa'iq. These are famous, muhaddithin of the Sunni world and their books. They all say these 2 years refers to Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. So yes, the question is, who is greater than the teacher or the student?
Okay, yeah.
That's a question.
Why don't people, why does no one focus on this point?
Why go to the student when you can go to the teacher?
Yeah, this is against aql. This is against logic.
Yeah, and then even on the same topic, you mentioned hadiths of, not hadiths, but sayings of maybe Abu Hanifa saying, if it wasn't for those 2 years. So do we as the Shia believe that Abu Hanifa was taught directly by Imam Ja'far Sadiq? Because I know many that tried to refute this claim, or even on the other side of the Sunni brothers and sisters trying to refute this claim. Because of course, what Sunni wants to hear that their scholar, the person they revere for fiqh and their jurisprudence was taught by a Shia. Do you get it? So how do we think about it as the Shia?
It's established. Sunni or Shia, I mean, history is history. If it's considered authentic, then it is accepted, right? It's established by both Sunni and Shia that these two directly and the other two indirectly studied under Imam Sadiq. Not only that, a lot of people don't know those madhahib that didn't exist. You see these 4 madhab, like the 4 khulafa.
Yeah.
This concept is a new concept, as in it wasn't there since the Prophet, or it's not something set in stone. Who made up this concept of 4? The madhahib al-arba', or the khulafa al-rashidun, or the arba', or these a'immatul arba', the 4. This is made up over time, over history, because this was the narrative of the government. Otherwise, there were other madhahib which have been dropped. For example, the madhab of Sufyan al-Thawri, who was also a student and contemporary of Abu Hanifa, studied under Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, that died. The madhab of Hassan al-Basri, who was close with the Umayyads, that dropped and died. So eventually there were other schools that lived, but eventually they died because they weren't supported by the government, or they didn't have the followers. These schools were supported. Abu Hanifa had given bay'ah to the Abbasids. Imam Malik was honored by the Abbas. He used to have a special seat where he used to sit and lecture. He wouldn't just sit on the floor. he would have a seat.
Okay.
In fact, the book of Malik, Muwatta al-Malik,
Yes.
was written under the commands of Al-Mansur, the tyrant of the Abbasids.
Abbas.
Yes.
And it said that, he asked him to write this book so that he doesn't narrate anything from Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib.
Okay.
And if somebody doesn't believe that, then find me a tradition in Muwatta from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Doesn't narrate anything directly from Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Completely zero, Sayyid.
Nothing directly from Imam Ali alayhi salam.
Wow. Wow.
How can a book of hadith be a book of knowledge if it does not have a giant like Ali?
أنا مدينة العلم وعلي
وعلي بابها. How can it be a book of knowledge if it does not refer back to the door of the city of knowledge? So this was the political mess of that time. The closer you were with the tyrants, the higher position. And so what happened eventually, these are hard facts we're talking about, and they're not really mentioned, and
Yeah.
a lot of the things are not known to the people because we have what's known as famous history.
Yes.
There's history which is famous,
Yeah.
but then there's ground realities. For example, they say Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam married Khadija Ummul Mu'minin when she was 40. This is famous history, but not reality. Reality is different. Or they will say that he married one of his wives was very young.
Yep.
This is famous history, but that's not reality. So there's a difference between that which is famous and that which is real. And what's famous is what's pumped out, the narrative which is pushed out by the khulafa, and these were the names: Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. Nobody supported. And look at the irony, subhanallah. The fact that the madhab of Imam Ja'far Sadiq was not supported, yet still it survives without anybody's support.
Subhanallah.
That shows you there's only one real support.
Allah Azza wa Jal. Subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Without any support, without any government backing. Today, you want government backing, you want funds, and you get the media, you get the screen time, and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam had none of that.
100%. The backing is from Allah.
Real
The
backing.
backing's from Allah
Wow.
subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say, just on the school of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, with all these different schools that we've been mentioning over the last few minutes, what makes the school of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq stand out compared to the other four?
Is the Imam himself.
Allah.
Salamullah.
Allah.
It is the essence of the Imam. When we say Imam Ja'far, it's very easy to say, and you hear people on the screens that say this: Imam Ja'far Sadiq, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Fulan. But this Imam Ja'far Sadiq and that Imam can nowhere be compared with one another, especially when one is the teacher, the other is the student.
Ahsant.
Imam Abu Hanifa is a mujtahid. Imam Malik is a mujtahid. Imam Sadiq is not a mujtahid.
It's Hujjat Allah.
Hujjah. He's ma'soom, mansoos min Allah. He's not. When we say Imam Ja'far Sadiq and we say Imam Shafi'i, we don't mean two mujtahideen or two of the scholars
Yeah.
who do ijtihad. No, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam doesn't do ijtihad. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, what he says is nas. What he says is clear reality. What he says is Islam. What makes him different? Let me give an example. Abu Hanifa, and a lot of people wouldn't know this, especially within the Sunni circles, because again, this is not what is put out there. Abu Hanifa himself is disputed within the Sunni circles.
Ajib.
Yeah. An-Nisa'i in his Kitab al-Du'afa, the book of the weak, he says Abu Hanifa was weak, as in weak in narrator as a muhaddith. Imam Bukhari even considers him weak. Abu Hanifa.
Interesting.
Sufyan al-Thawri, who was with him, who was a contemporary and a student of Imam Sadiq, he had a school of his own, which died off eventually. He says, okay, he was a faqih, but he wasn't a muhaddith. He was not strong in hadith. So he was strong in something,
Yeah.
but weak in something else. Similar things you'll find with the others like Maliki. Imam Malik had a book on narrations. But then there are scholars who would say, well, he was not strong in fiqh. There are scholars who would say Shafi'i was strong in hadith, but he was weak in fiqh. Shafi'i, and in fact, if you study Shafi'i, he was in Iraq and Egypt. When he was in Iraq, his fatwas were different. When he went to Egypt, he changed the fatwas. He says, what I said in Iraq is old, what I say in Egypt is new. So that madhab is qadim and this madhab is jadid. So he changes his stance. Abu Hanifa would change his stance. Malik would change his stance. Sometimes they would, they wouldn't allow people to, don't write this. Because what I think today may not be that what I think tomorrow. So they were all disputed. If there's anyone undisputed, that's Imam Ja'far Sadiq. Salamullahi alayhi. You would never find Imam Ja'far Sadiq say, don't write this down because tomorrow I might change my mind. You would never say Imam Sadiq alayhi salam say, well look, in Medina, I believe this. And today I'm in Kufa, I believe that. They all believe the same things. Their statements never changed. And where they were strong in, for example, the other Imams were strong in one subject, they were weak in the other. Imam Sadiq was strong in all of the ulum. Fiqh, usul, theology, philosophy, hadith, tafsir of the Holy Quran, jurists, you name it. Usul, everything Imam Sadiq alayhi salam had it covered. This is what makes him different. This is what makes him stand out from the others. What makes his position different to others. You know, there are times that Abu Hanifa was given. Mansur once calls Abu Hanifa and he says, test Ja'far ibn Muhammed. We'll bring him into the court, test him. Ask him the most difficult questions. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam comes, he says, I asked him 40 questions. I had prepared them, the most difficult ones. And he says, by God, he answered each and every question like this. He says, oh Abu Hanifa, the people of Medina believe this, you believe that, and we Ahlul Bayt believe this.
Allah.
So he says he knows our beliefs. Yeah. He knows the belief because he was from Iraq. Ahlul Iraq. Abu Hanifa was from Kufa. Ahlul Medina believe that. And then he says, we believe this. So not only does he know the answers, he knows the aqa'id, the belief system of all of the schools. He says, by God, I have not seen anyone more a'lam than Ja'far ibn Muhammad. Al-Sadiq, salamullah alayhi. Where will you find an imam like this, brothers?
Yes.
You have a look through history, you find someone like this.
But then that's where I have a question as well. Sorry, Sayyid, we're asking so many.
No.
But honestly, I'm just trying to learn as much as I can with this hour, 45 minutes that we have with you. But I wanted to ask, Imam Ja'far Sadiq, salamullahi alayhi, they say that he carried on what his father before him, Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, laid foundations on. Can you give me a bit of history on that? Just so
yes.
I understand. What's the difference between Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, salamullahi alayhi's school, university, and how did it differ when Imam Ja'far Sadiq took charge? Because we normally say where Ja'far is. So that means he, not only did he firm the foundations, but he built the pillars of fiqh. Yeah. So what was Imam Muhammad al-Baqir doing to prepare his son to now go and make this an outbranch, to teach so many students? That's something I'm trying to understand.
So you're absolutely right. The foundations were laid. And we have to give credit to Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam as well. We do say, it's the Ja'fari madrasa or the school, but the foundations were laid by Imam Baqir alayhi salam. And of course, Imam Sadiq had that opportunity that none of the other Aimma before him or after him have had. Inshallah, the 12th Imam will have that opportunity. But the 11 Imams, he had the opportunity, he propagated the most, he lived the longest, he had the most students. Hassan ibn Ali al-Washa, he was a big name amongst the theologians of that time. Amongst the different schools, like Hassan Basri, these guys. He says, once I entered the masjid, I saw about 900 people were sitting there. And they are different circles. Like when you go to a mosque and they're all discussing, studying. Like sometimes you go to the house of Najaf or Qum, you see the ulama in circles. They're doing what's called mubahatha.
Bahth al-Kharij, sort of.
Or even even the introductory students will do that.
Okay.
Mubahatha, as in they sit and they discuss narrations and whatever they've learned. So it shows it's an old tradition, yes. So I said I went to the masjid and I saw everybody's in circles and they were discussing. So I walked by all of them. And they all said the same thing. There was 900 there. They all said one thing. They narrated the hadith and they said, we heard this from Ja'far al-Sadiq. We heard this from Ja'far al-Sadiq. We heard this from Ja'far al-Sadiq. Because the name Ja'far was so common and it was upon the tongues, it became known as Ja'fari.
Makes sense, yeah.
There's an interesting story actually, which I just read a few days ago in one of the books. One of the qadi, the judge, when two people were brought to him, of course they were from the Abbasid courts.
Yep.
So when two people were brought to him to give testimony as witness, he looked at them and he says, Ja'fariyan Fatimiyan. These are two Ja'fari Fatimi Shia. So these words at that time they used the word Ja'fari Fatimi because there was two of them Ja'fariyan. These two are Ja'fari, these two are Fatimi. So the ulama, they pulled it out from the books and said, look, even at that time they used these words. It's not that today we use the word Ja'fari and Fatimi and Alawi. These are from that time. So because of that, though Imam Baqir alayhi salam lays the foundation, yet the system, the school is associated with his son, Ja'far al-Sadiq. Salamullahi alayhi. Salamullahi alayhima.
Baqir al-Ulum. Is the correct translation the splitter of knowledge? The splitter of knowledge.
Baqir al-ilm al-nabiyyin. The one who splits the ulum of the nabiyyin, the knowledge of all of the prophets. In other words, that knowledge existed, but he split that knowledge so that it was easy to absorb.
Yep.
And he explained it. The tafsil, the details, they come from Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam.
Alayhim as-salam. And subhanAllah, whenever we hear, for example, if we say Qala Sadiq or a hadith from Imam al-Radha, for example, or whether Imam al-Hasan al-Askari say, for example, the beautiful thing about the Ahlul Bayt is it traces always back to Rasulullah Muhammed sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ultimately, these are the laws of Allah Azza wa Jalla subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not like someone came and made up this ruling and said, this is Islamic law and that's haram and this is mubah and that's mustahab. No, this is what Rasulullah said, right? And that's the beautiful thing about the Ja'fari school of thought. And say, just aside from the fiqh, if I can ask about aqaid for a moment.
So if I can just add on to your point, as you made a point that you reminded me of a point I wanted to make. This is what makes him different to the others. Because قال الصادق or قال Abu Abdullah al-Sadiq is قال Rasulullah. But this cannot be said for Abu Hanifa or Imam Malik or Imam Shafi'i or Ahmed ibn Hanbal. And this, you can challenge this to the
truth,
to the Sunni world.
Yeah.
This can only be said for Ja'far al-Sadiq. Even if they don't accept Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, they must accept that out of these five, so four of the A'immatul Arba of the Ahlul Sunnah and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, who is the descendant of the Prophet? You go and ask the question. There's only one. Who is from the household of the Prophet? And as the Arabic saying goes, Sahibul Bayt adra bima fiha. The person within the house knows what's in the house. Sahibul Bayt adra bima fil bayt. He knows best what's in the house. And that's why the Holy Imam says, Hadithi, hadithu abi.
Yes.
My hadith is the hadith of my father. Wa hadithu abi hadithu jaddi. And the saying of my father is the saying of my grandfather. Wa hadithu jaddi hadithul Husayn. Wa hadithul Husayn hadithul Hasan. Wa hadithul Hasan hadithu Amir al-Mu'minin. Wa hadithu Amir al-Mu'minin hadithu Rasulillah. Wa hadithu Rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi qawlullah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Beautiful.
So what Ja'far al-Sadiq says is the word of God. So I just want to add this as a point, that this is something that makes him different compared to the other four.
Well, thanks for sharing that. It's beautiful. Inshallah, those listening, take notes, inshallah, and learn from this man that we're discussing today. Sayyid, we spoke about the fiqh, and normally we refer to the other schools. We say, for example, the Shafi'i school of thought. Normally we refer to them when it comes to fiqh, jurisprudence and things.
Right.
But when it comes to the aqaid, how comes they differed? If they learn, for example, and they spend all these years in the classes of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, I'm sure the Imam spoke about aqaid as well. What happened? What went wrong with the other schools?
It's interesting because we do find that Imam Sadiq alayhi salam at numerous occasions tells off Abu Hanifa. He tells him off. Don't.
I was going to ask that. I was going to ask, how did Imam Sadiq treat those two? You know? Like, how was the teaching system?
Yeah. So again, this is history that's not discussed too much. Should we discuss it?
Yes,
Of course.
So there is, there's some harsh statements from the Holy Imam towards Abu Hanifa especially, Al-Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Imam Musa Al-Kadhim alayhi salam towards Abu Hanifa. Very harsh statements. For example, Abu Hanifa, Ya Abu Hanifa, do not do qiyas. He used to do qiyas.
Yes.
He was known for his qiyas. It's a jurisprudential, fiqhi terminology. One of his ways to derive rulings. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. But he used to do something where he used to apply his own reasoning, basically, to keep it simple for the audience. He used to apply his own reasoning for a ruling where there was no reasoning given in Quran or Hadith. So he would say, okay, because alcohol is haram, because it intoxicates, something else is haram, we don't know the reason, but we'll say, okay, the reason is the same. So he would it's like a guesswork, where he now gives his opinion, his ra'i, his own opinion. This is haram because of this, It's not really a reason for it. So he gives his own. Anyway, this was forbidden. Ahlul Bayt never did such a thing. Either there is nas, clear instruction, Quran, Hadith, Ahlul Bayt, otherwise you don't give your own reasoning in this. You keep silent, or there's other rulings in usul that. Anyway, he says, do not do qiyas. For the first one who did qiyas, Iblis. He compares him to shaitan. He says, do not do this. The first one to do was shaitan.
Wow.
When he said, I am made from fire, and Adam is made from the dust. Why should fire bow to the dust? Fire is better. All of these things. He says, don't apply your own reasoning. Because I am better, I'm not going to bow. Number one. Number two, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam once sees Imam Sadiq is going out. Abu Hanifa sees him. And the Holy Imam is holding a walking stick, a staff. He says, you're young. Why do you hold a stick? He says, this is the stick of Rasulullah. This is the asa of our grandfather Rasulullah. So he says, Yabna Rasulillah, give me permission to kiss it. He bends forward to kiss it. The Holy Imam puts his hand out. He says, kiss the hand. This is the stick of the Prophet. But within me is the blood of Rasulullah.
Allah.
So he's teaching him, so for the first one, he's teaching him fiqh.
Yeah.
With this, he's teaching him aqaid.
Yes.
Wow.
That if you honor the stick of the Prophet, then I am the flesh and the blood. إِنَّهُمْ مِنِّي وَأَنَا مِنْهُمْ لَحْمُكَ لَحْمِي وَدَمُكَ دَمِي. All these narrations that exist, right? Their blood is my blood, their flesh is my flesh. إِنَّهُمْ مِنِّي وَأَنَا مِنْهُمْ, I am from them, they are from me. So he says, kiss this instead. So what went wrong? It goes back to Saqifa. Their tendencies were there. Their loyalties were there. Yes, they learned al-fiqh. They learned that. But at the same time, they were giving allegiance to the Khulafa. Different reasons. I mean, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam's sect could have been much more popular and famous. You know why? Because he was offered. In fact, when the Abbasids came, they said, you become the caliph. Imam says, no, you're not one of us, and this is not the time for it. There were others who were given the position. Why don't you become the Qadhi al-Qudda, the chief judge, or as you have the Grand Muftis today. Right? Yeah. You still have the Grand Muftis. Why don't you become the Grand Mufti? I say, no problem. But you must give us bay'ah. So a lot of them gave bay'ah, and they became the Muftis. And that's something Imam Sadiq would never do, because Imam Hussein never did that. And Ali ibn Abi Talib never did that. Imam Hassan never did that. So why would he do that?
So Ahl al-Bayt live on principles and values, and this is some things they learn from their forefathers. And inshallah, this is something we also implement in our lives.
Inshallah.
So many settings that we see, especially over the last few years. Sayyid, I want to ask something about the Abbasid caliphs. Between the Umayyads and the Abbasids, there was like a transitional period. I'm not going to say it was rosy. It was a huge mess. but it was an opportunity for Imam Al-Sadiq to take a leadership role, if we can say it like that, right? He chose not to, and he chose not to take any role. Of course, he has his God-given role, which is Imamah, but any other role he didn't take. Why? Why didn't he take the opportunity? If he had some sort of flexibility, I'm not going to say he had freedom to do what he want, but he had some sort of legitimacy in the name of the Abbasids who are saying, come rule because we want the Ahl al-Bayt to rule, if I'm not mistaken. That's how they came back into power as well. That was an opportunity for him to, let's say, grow the Shi'a sect or bring back the Sunnah of Rasulullah to a wider, bigger audience. Why did he choose not to? Is it a lost opportunity or is there wisdom behind it?
Well, there's definitely wisdom behind it.
Never a lost opportunity.
Because I say this why?
Why?
Not because I believe it's a lost opportunity, but because we had a conversation on the life of Imam al-Hasan a few weeks back with Sayyid Muhammad Shari'. And the question was, why did he do a peace treaty with Muawiyah? But when you know the ins and outs, you understand the wisdom behind it all.
Yeah.
So why didn't the Imam take a position, a worldly position?
Yes. And you've answered it. Because it was a worldly position. Because of the mess that was involved with him. So they wrote to him actually.
Yeah.
Abu Muslim, who rose up for the Abbasids. He wrote to him and said, you be the ruler. But the problem is, he didn't just write to him. They weren't true to the Holy Imam. They wrote to a few of the elders of Banu Hashim. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. They wrote to the grandson, one of the great grandsons of Imam Hassan alayhi salam, from Hassan al-Muthanna, and other elders of Banu Hashim who were in the time of Imam Sadiq. Number one, so they were not sincere to Imam Sadiq. Number two, the Imam knew when they came to him, he says to them, "Antum laysa min rijali." You're not my men. You're not my Shia. Because someone did ask that to the Holy Imam. We have in narrations. Why not? Why not? The Imam says, they're not my Shia. That was key. If he was to do that, he would do that with his own Shia. Number one. Number two, to work with the tyrant is to be under the tyrant.
Yeah.
Or to have a tyrant on your team, even if you take leadership role, you still have a tyrant on your team. Because they won't have it any other way. They're not saying that we'll step away and you come and do what you... Because otherwise they would have never done anything. They would have just gone to the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Yabna Rasulillah, you lay your hand out and we'll give you bay'ah. It's not that. The Imam knew, he knew the outcome. This is not the right outcome. It's the same thing with the Imam Hassan alayhi salam, Imam Amir al-Mu'minin, Imam Hussein. Just give bay'ah, give allegiance, or do something in our support, and then everything's okay. But they wouldn't do that. And also the Imam knew this is a better opportunity. I've got to undo all of the mess that has been coming from Saqifa. So this is an important point now.
It's generational. Allah
Yes, Imam is now directly fighting the effects of Saqifa. You might say, what does Imam Sadiq got to do with Saqifa? That's Ali ibn Abi Talib, salamullahi alayhi, and Sayyid al-Zahra, salamullahi alayhi. Imam fighting directly the effects of Saqifa. What were the effects? Don't write hadith. Hasbuna kitab Allah. They said the book of God is enough. Imam Sadiq says, no, write the hadith. Write the ulum. So what did he do? He took this opportunity to propagate the true Muhammadan, Alawi and Fatimi Islam. The true Islam. And hence you find that he, to his students, he would propagate his wilayah numerous times. They would ask him, what is the greatest ni'mah? He would say, wilayatuna ahlil bayt.
Allah.
Once they asked him, what is the word Allah? This Ismullah. I mean, there's no word greater than this word. Alif. Then you have the lams and then the ha. He says the alif, this is his ta'weel. This is directly from the Imam. Listen to this. He says the alif is ala'ullah, which is ni'mah. He says, what is the ni'mah? He says, wilaya.
Beautiful.
And then the lams that come follow, the two lam. He says the lam is for iltizam, lazim, incumbent, necessary, wajib. What is that? He says our wilaya. And then the ha at the end He says that ha is for halaka, perish. For who? A'da'ana, our enemies. In other words, the name, ism of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wilaya of Ahlul Bayt, tawalli, and at the same time, at-tabarri, from the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. Allah cannot be reached without Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So he took this opportunity to preach things like these. Wilaya, ta'weel of Ahlul Bayt, tafsir of Ahlul Bayt. Hadith was not written. You remember Imam Ali alayhi salam wrote the tafsir of the Quran? The Quran wa Aliyin. Quran wa Ali. He wrote it. He brought it to the caliphs. They said, we don't want it. Now was the time to teach that to the people. So he used this time to try to undo the damage of Saqifa.
Yeah. Wow. That's a lot to take in.
That's an answer and a half. But then from there, I also thought, okay, so this was a time to teach all those things that the Imams before might have not been able to because of the Abbas, the Umayyad dynasty that was on top of them. So is it true when we say Imam Ja'far Sadiq salamullahi alayhi had more freedom than his forefathers, or was there still a bit of taqiyya during his time? You know, did he have freedom to teach whatever he wanted to his students, or was there still, I can't say this stuff. I know there's spies within my own classrooms. No, whilst the Umayyads and the Abbasids are clashing and fighting, they're still aiming to me and they're still trying to catch me out. Or was there no? Did the Imam see, wait, whilst they fight each other, let me strengthen the ummah of Muhammad wa Muhammad. Let me strengthen the ummah and let me teach them of all those things that they could have been taught but weren't able to. If you get what I mean.
Yeah, so he definitely did have an opportunity that the other Imams didn't have. Because of the infighting between the Abbasids and the Umayyin. So he definitely had that time. And this is what I said in the beginning, that this is the reason why he needs to be studied the most. Because our narrations come directly from him. The most narrations are from Imam Al-Sadiq. Al-Kafi, Al-Tahdhib, Al-Istibsar, Man la yahdaruhu al-Faqih. The most narrations are from who? The sixth holy Imam. And despite that, subhanAllah, that it brings me to the point that just this, the fact that he has the most narrations in our book, and he's the teacher of Abu Hanifa and Malik. He doesn't have a single narration in Bukhari.
Dhulum, say this is dhulum.
It's hatred. It's more than that. That tells you something about Bukhari. Again, it's another chapter we don't want to open. But why did Bukhari not write a single hadith from Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam? The teacher of their Imam. There's so many narrations. Even if you don't take him as an Imam, you take him as a mujtahid. Put his narrations in there.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was the answer really. That was the time that the Holy Imam really did. So he had that. But, of course, there was taqiyya for the Shia. Because you had the likes of Mansur. Mansur Dawaniqi. Who had killed so many Shia that it is said that under his palace he had his Darul Khilafa. He had underground tunnels which were, when he died, when they opened those rooms, there were skulls in there. They said, whose skulls are these? These are the Alawiyin that we've killed. So there was always, I don't think there was any time that it was without taqiyya. But sometimes it was up, sometimes it was down.
Would he use taqiyya in his classes?
Yeah. I like when he would teach.
When he would teach.
We would have to look at specific examples, but then that would defeat the purpose of teaching.
What about this hadith that we hear from Imam Al-Sadiq where he says, taqiyya is my religion and the religion of my forefathers? What does he mean by that?
Yeah, and one who does not have taqiyya does not have iman.
Yes. That's
and
like
this is misused.
And they say, look, you Shias use taqiyya 24/7, you're Imam.
Yeah.
What is this whole hadith all about?
So the taqiyya really is there. It's not for the Imam. Taqiyya is for the awam. It's not so much for, otherwise, which Imam did taqiyya really? Which Imam did taqiyya? Which Imam ever prayed like this? Which Imam, did wudu the other way. Yes, there were certain times they would say certain things for
The followers.
followers.
Yeah.
For example, the hadith that exists for Zurara. He's praised, but at the same time he's condemned
Yes.
to save his life. Okay, so there are certain traditions that have crept up like this to save the life of the Shia. Is the deen, the deen. So what does it say? If you don't have taqiyya, you don't have iman, you don't have deen. What is taqiyya? Taqiyya is basically the weapon of the oppressed. It's the only weapon I have as an oppressed person. I'm gonna get killed. I'm gonna get, beheaded. If they find out, I'm gonna pray with the turba. Or they find out something in certain parts of the world. Okay? For that reason, the Imam teaches them taqiyya. And taqiyya, by the way, is not nifaq. As I said, this is nifaq.
Yeah.
It's not lying. It's not lying. It's concealing your faith to safeguard yourself in the face of an extreme takfiri enemy who's thirsty for your blood. That's all it is. It's not that we are changing our belief. No. The heart still stays full of iman.
Yes.
Temporarily, just for the mazlum to protect himself, to get out of this situation, he can save his life. What's wrong with that?
So much knowledge
I
on that.
remembered a point of taqiyya. We had a discussion on the After Maghrib podcast like many months back where we spoke about taqiyya when it came to Ammar ibn Yasir and Rasulullah. When he was seeing his mother being tortured, and then he came to Rasulullah and he said to him, you know what, I said I don't believe in God. And then he asked him, what did your heart say? He said, I believed in God. So there's so much things to go back to. Like even if you're not Shia and you're listening to this episode thinking about what's taqiyya all about, it's there. Just ask the right questions. And there are episodes on the podcast, so just write taqiyya and inshallah they will lead you to the right answers to the questions you may have. Say there's a note that I have down here that I wanted to ask. And I think it's the right time to possibly bring it into the discussion now. People say there's a link between Imam Al-Sadiq and Abu Abdullah Al-Hussein alayhi salam. For us, the way I see it is Imam Al-Sadiq, he spent I think the first 10, 11 or 12 years under Imam Zayn al-Abidin alayhi salam. So he'd see how Imam Sajjad was affected by the events that took place in Karbala. His father, as a young man, was in Karbala. He'd see how his father would mourn and remember Abu Abdullah Hussein on the plains of Karbala. So there's a connection that I think we find where we can fairly say that Imam Al-Sadiq had a connection to his grandfather Imam Al-Hussein. What is this link? There was a question we asked in Ramadan where we said, what is the link between Laylat al-Qadr and Fatima al-Zahra? And we put the connection together. What's the link between Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam and Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam?
Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, you can say he is the one, yeah.
I think the word I'm missing here is Azadari of Imam al-Hussein.
Right. So, in fact, you could say he is the one who established the Azadari or the A'za of Imam al-Hussein salamullahi alayhi. Because the majlis begins in his house. Today when you have a majlis, you have a lecture. You have somebody who recites the Noha, the Latam, or Nasheed, something for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the Na'i. That exists in the time of Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam.
Yeah.
And we have narrations of that. Him in his house, he would draw a curtain, and he would have the women of Ahlul Bayt or the women of the household would sit on the other side of the curtain. He would sit on the other side with a mena, and he would invite the reciter. And he would say, recite for me something for my grandfather Hussein. And so there are names of certain shu'ara, poets, who would recite shi'r. I've heard you recite shi'r. Do you recite for my grandfather Hussein? That shows you the importance of how much the Imams loved a poet who recites for Hussein ibn Ali. One of them by the name of Ja'far ibn Affan, he would say, oh Ja'far, I've heard you are a sha'ir. Recite for me something for Hussein. And so he would recite for Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and he would say, I recited I saw tears would begin to flow from the eyes of Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Then I would end, and then the Imam would say, no, recite more. And then he would recite more. And he said he would cry with a loud voice. And then I would end. And it's strange because then he says the third time, no, recite more. There's a message in this. The Imam did not want short majalis. You know, this whole short majalis, let's keep it as short and sweet.
Yeah.
30-minute one.
Very short. The Imam didn't want short majalis.
Keep going.
He says, do it again.
Yeah.
Keep going. He says, until I saw that he cried in a way that his shoulders would shake. You know, sometimes you cry and your shoulders move, and he cried like that. And we would hear the ladies crying on the other side of the veil, other side of the curtain. So Imam establishes the azadari. So this is the connection with Sayyidu Shuhada, Abu Abdullah al-Husayn. That he establishes it in his house. So the second message for us today is to hold majlis in your house. You know, there are brothers, and I've recited a lot of majalis in a lot of homes. SubhanAllah, the mu'mineen do great. But there's still mu'mineen who do not hold majalis in their homes. Hold majalis in your homes. This is a tradition that was started by Ahlul Bayt. It's not by the Shia of Ahlul Bayt. By Ahlul Bayt themselves. Imam Rida alayhi salam in his house. Di'bal. Come and recite. Okay? Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, you would cry 30 years. He would see water, he would cry. Number one. Number two, whenever Imam alayhi salatu wasalam would drink water, Imam Al-Sadiq, that water would remind him of his grandfather. He would say, Salamu ala al-Husayn, and then he would say, he would curse, Allahumma la'an Yazid ibn Muawiyah. He would curse the killers. And he says it to the Rawi of the hadith, Dawood, Ya Dawood, when you drink water, remember Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Because Imam Hussain wanted that. Remember in Karbala on Ashura, when he says, oh my Ya Shi'ati, whenever you drink water, remember the thirst of Hussain. So Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam takes you directly to Imam Al-Sadiq. Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam takes you directly back to Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salatu wasalam. This is that connection. And every Imam said, and whether they say directly or not, but we have from the Imams, La yawm ka yawmika ya Abu Abdullah.
Salamullah al-Husayn.
So he is the founder of what we have to. You know, when we go to the majalis, we should take. I know, Brother Yasir, you are directly involved in the khidmah of the Majlis al-Husayn. This is a ni'mah you should cherish, because these majalis you have today, they are directly the result of the hard work of Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam. What we have today is directly from them.
What a beautiful way to put it. Oh my days.
Yeah.
You see it from a different perspective. May Allah protect you, Yasir.
No,
I've genuinely seen your genuine khidmah,
Astaghfirullah.
as well as yourself, Sayyidina.
As well as yourself as well.
You know, the world of servitude and service, and it's like we say it's a khayma on top of us, right? It's like a tent. It gives us barakah, protects us, or something gives life meaning. I can't imagine life without any khidmah. I think life will be not worth living, I'll be very honest with you. Sayyid, I think if I can ask a question in relation to the martyrdom of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi salam, being the week of his shahada, I don't think many people understand or know how the Imam was killed.
Sorry, Said. Or maybe like not just how, but why as well.
So I think
He
the
lived
why
for
is
so long.
because if they gave
what
him
changed?
so if they gave him like so much flexibility, if they gave him, you know, some freedoms to teach and speak with the people and spend time with the Muslim Ummah and, you know, have years and ample years until today, mashallah, tens of thousands of hadith from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, why suddenly let's silence him? Why let's poison him now? Like, what happened? Did he become a danger to the Abbasid dynasty?
And by the way, there's a point here. You know, you said we have tens of thousands of hadith from the Holy Imam. Did you know our one book, Al-Kafi, contains more traditions than the books of Muslim and Bukhari and Tirmidhi put together, especially if you remove the repeated traditions. For example, Bukhari, if you remove the traditions which are repeated, same traditions again and again, you'd probably have less than 4,000 hadith.
Interesting.
Muslim, similar. Whereas Al-Kafi has 16,000 narrations. Majority of them come from Ja'far al-Sadiq. That shows you how much ilm was spread from his holy tongue, his holy mouth. And this is exactly what Mansur could not take. His popularity was rising. His students were increasing. And by the way, Mansur for many years didn't touch. Okay, fine, that Umayyi and the Abbasid fight that took place, that happened. Now, Khulafa Bani Abbas came. What were they doing? The Umayyis are gone now. Why don't you kill Imam Sadiq now? You know what Mansur was busy in? It is a historical point here. He was busy in building the city of Baghdad. Baghdad was built by Mansur. He was busy with that. He wanted to build a fine city. A city known for its beauty, for its buildings, for its bridges. Especially Baghdad is known for bridges. And hence this, they put the coffin of Imam Musa al-Kadhim on a bridge. Ala Jisr al-Baghdad.
Yeah.
Right? It's known for bridges historically. He was busy building that. And so the Imam the popularity began to rise, his students began to rise, the people around him. And so they killed him like they would kill any other Imam. It got to a point that they would realize that there is only one way out of this, is to kill. To try to extinguish the nur of Allah. And you cannot extinguish the nur of Allah. The Imam was Nurullah. They wanted to extinguish it, like they did with the other A'immah. And so even before that actually, before he was poisoned numerous times. But the poison didn't take effect. Did you know they burnt the house of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam twice? Twice his house was burnt.
Allahu Akbar.
In Medina. And I don't know what it is with the enemies of Ahlul Bayt. They like to burn homes. There was other homes burnt.
Homes, tents,
Khiyam. The house of Sayyidah Zahra. They burned the house and the Imam came out into his house. And he would say, Anabnu A'raq al-Thara, Anabnu Ibrahim, Khalilullah. I am the son of Ibrahim. I am the son of Ismail. You don't know who I am. And so eventually, it's not that it was just quick poison done. They tortured him, they oppressed him, they burned his house, and he would cry. And they would say to him, Yabna Rasulullah, why do you cry? You're safe, your children are safe. He says, yes, but I remember the burning of the tent of our aunt Zainab.
Ya Zainab.
And so, look at how Imam Al-Sadiq takes us back to Karbala. He cries, he remembers Sayyidah Zainab. When somebody comes to him and he says, Yabna Rasulullah, Allah has blessed me with a daughter. What have you named her? I've named her Fatima. Again he cries, Fatima, ya Fatima. Make sure you never slap your daughter. Because you remembered those slaps. And so, because of that, Mansur now decided that it was time to poison the holy Imam. And so in the month of Shawwal, the famous date is the 25th of Shawwal. I know some centers also do 15th of Shawwal, but 25th being the more famous date, is that the holy Imam left this dunya and was buried in Jannatul Baqi. And this adds to the oppression.
Yeah.
That has just been 100 years, according to the Gregorian calendar, that the grave of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam still is without a dome. Why should he not have a dome? The teacher of your Imams, Abu Hanifa and Malik. Why can he not have a dome? Why can we not give that respect? I say this in this podcast tonight, that I am proud to be Ja'fari. Because at least I can say my Imam was the teacher of your Imams, not vice versa. Every Shia should take pride in his identity. Every Shia should be proud. With the social media and podcasts and YouTube and reels and all of that, what's happening on the internet.
Yep.
people are having difficult conversations. And it's fine to have them in a respectful, polite, scholarly manner. And so we say respectfully that we are proud Ja'faris, we are proud as Shia of Ja'far Al-Sadiq. It's not time to be shy anymore. There's not time to hide your faith. Proclaim your faith. Say you're a Ja'fari. How many times how many times has it happened with the youth when they're at universities, at work, you go into a prayer and you pray. And they ask, which madhab do you follow? I remember it happened, I'm sure it's happened to you. You pray with your colleagues, they might ask you, or somebody in the prayer room ask you, which madhab?
I used to pray in sixth form back in the days when I was I think I was age 16, if I'm not mistaken, and we'll always have issues, like we'll end up having debates, like why are you praying on a turba, like are we Shia, why are you not Sunni, like you're right, you're absolutely right.
No, take it with a pride.
Even today at work, my colleague asked me, why are you wearing a ring? I told him it's the Sunnah of Rasulullah. He says, that's a Ja'fari thing, right? That's how they think.
It's good, so he knows.
Yeah, at least he knows.
They know.
At least he knows the originator.
No, I remember...
They know, and let's remind them.
Yeah.
I've had the same situation. Where people would ask, which madhab are you... No, they want to give you a choice at times. Are you Hanbali? Are you Shafi'i? Or because we pray with the hands down, are you Maliki? And you know why Malik prays with the hands down? Because he preferred the opinions of Ahlul Madinah. Because he said, Medina, I saw people pray with their hands down. Abu Hanifa's, is from Iraq, and Shafi'i is in Iraq, and then Egypt.
Yep.
I'm from Medina. People in Medina pray their hands down. Then Imam Sadiq alayhi salam is from the best household of Medina. He's the chief of Medina. So take pride in the Ja'fari faith. That our Imam is the teacher, and when do you cannot prefer the student of the teacher, number one. Number two is directly from the household of the Prophet, direct descendant of the Prophet. And number three, his ulum, his chain, when Imam Sadiq would narrate in his class, his chain was only 3 to 4. I heard from my father, who heard from his father, who heard from Ali, who heard from the Prophet. Whereas others would go left and right, here and there, trying to build a chain.
The best chain.
As they say, silsilatu dhahab.
The golden chain.
Dhahabiyya. And they would say that if you narrate this on the Majnoon, his junoon would go.
Allah.
There is shifa in this. There is a shifa in this. Where do you find this silsila? Only with Imam Ja'far Sadiq. So take pride today when you meet people on social media. Take pride to be a Ja'far. We have nothing to hide. In fact, we have more. That's what I'm saying. There's famous history and these are haqaiq which are not discussed.
We have so much gems to share. You're so right saying that. So right.
There's so much more out there.
There is.
Inshallah. Slowly, inshallah, you can bring it out onto your podcast.
Inshallah, we try our best, and we are doing this, inshallah, today with you, Sayyidina, yourself.
Inshallah, this is
Habibi. Sayyid Mushtaba, if I can ask, Sayyid Mushtaba in the background, our viewers are very used to your name by now.
Yes.
As a Shi'i, if I can ask you, as someone who runs a Shia Muslim platform, content creation, do you think... I'm going to ask you sincerely, do you think your sixth Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq, is proud of the work that After Maghrib is doing? In your own opinion.
Oh, difficult one.
No, shouldn't be difficult.
I think for what we put out there, there's still a lot more we can do.
Ahsant.
Especially as a Shia community, I don't think we've reached our full potential. But if you want to say us as a team, I think we're doing as much as we can.
Okay.
But there's still a lot more that we can do.
Ahsant. No, you're absolutely right. Someone once asked me, they were saying, you know what, you guys are doing so much. I was like, you think we do so much? Well, there's so much that we haven't done. And that's the madness about it. Is that
honestly, the podcast for us was supposed to be just the starting point to delve into a whole world of content creation.
Yeah.
Whether it's different categories of podcasts or different styles of shows or vlogs or just general YouTube type of shows, but it's so much work, and obviously it depends on the viewer's support.
That's exactly why I asked the question. I was going to say it's important that inshallah the listeners and viewers at home, they take inspiration from the conversations that we have here week in, week out. Please support After Maghrib. It's important that we can rely on your generous contributions. Visit aftermaghrib.com and consider becoming a monthly partner with After Maghrib.
I think the easiest way is for people to buy merch now. At least you get something back that way if you feel like you want to take part in the podcast.
And how can they buy the merch?
Aftermaghrib.com/shop.
/shop.
Good promotion at the end of
Ahsantum.
the episode.
I had to plug it
Use
in.
code Ahmed for 10% off.
Code Ahmed for 10% off. Sayyidina.
Is that a real code?
Yeah. We made it last week.
Okay.
Sayyidina, I wanted to thank you.
Thank you, man.
For sharing with us your knowledge, your ilm, your words of wisdom, and your advice.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I picked on that I never really thought about in a deep sense, if I can say. And there's definitely so much lessons that those watching and listening all around the world that can implement in their lives, and look forward to learning more from this amazing Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. And condolences to the listeners all around the world and to the Imam of our time on the martyrdom of Imam Ja'far Al-Sadiq alayhi salam. Sayyidina, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yasir, it's been amazing co-hosting alongside
Honestly,
you.
It was an honor to be with you once again, Sayyidina. Thank you, Sayyidina, for your
Allah bless you
beautiful
both.
lessons.
And
Honestly, it was
I
an
think
honor.
I'll answer the question that I think Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salam would be very happy and proud of you both, and all
Inshallah.
three of you, the whole team.
Inshallah.
Because anyone who says one praise for the Imam, that does not go unrewarded or unanswered. You send salutations on them, you send salams to them, they reply to your salam. It's something you're doing to try to bring Imam Al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam to the forefront. He deserves a lot more time, a lot more podcasts, a lot more is out there. As I said, the longest living Imam is going to have much more than one day of wilada and one day of shahada.
Ahsant.
Ahsantum, Sayyidina.
Very kind of you, Sayyidina. Thank you.
Ahsantum,
Allah bless you
Appreciate
both,
it.
inshallah.
May Allah bless you.
Ameen.
Um,
Do you want to end today's episode?
no, I started. But I'm just going to say, Ahmed Goku, hurry up.
Come back.
They keep bringing us randomers and we're not doing the same thing as you.
astaghfirullah,
So please, come on.
I love each and every single one of you.
Habibi Sayyidina,
Yes,
I
it's
never
not
said...
random.
In many ways, you are.
Yasser, you're a regular, not
لا Sayyidina, I love you as well. But Ahmed Goku, شوية استعجل.
And on that note, inshallah, we'll see you again same time next week. Stay tuned. Subscribe to the podcast. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام ورحمة الله.